Hi, welcome to the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. My name is Dr. Sarah Gordon, and I am super excited to have on my friend, John Doherty, and guest today, and talk about his journey from being in law enforcement for 30 years to being a poet. And I just think it's such an interesting story, and I'm excited to kind of talk about that transformation and that transition in your life. So, welcome to my podcast.
Yay.
And I just the reason I one of the reasons I wanted to have you on and to have this conversation today because this podcast is always it's framed within the PhD journey and what
Hmm.
that was like for me and how that kind of took a toll in terms of mental health and physical health and
Sure.
social relationships and all that kind of good stuff. And it was hard and it was tough. And now I'm using this platform to give back to other people and help other people. And so when I thought about inviting you on the show, and I'm going to read your background to share with our listeners, but
Okay.
I just thought about like law enforcement and you talk about like handling hard stuff. I mean, you were in law enforcement for 30 years.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to handle, how to have some mental strength and all that.
Sure.
And I think that it's interesting. I want to talk to you about how do you balance all that. And so when we can, help our listeners if they're going through challenging things in their lives, how do you balance all of that? So that's kind of the impetus for
Okay.
inviting you on. So thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
Now, let me just let people know a little bit about how we know each other.
Right.
Okay. So our paths crossed in a wonderful place called the Delaware Budokan, which is a martial arts school. And I remember the first day I walked in, John, you were one of the first people who just came right over to me and made me feel welcomed.
Yeah. Very good.
So thank you for that. And the truth is that was kind of I needed that home and that
Sure.
space at that point in time. And when we talk about social emotional growth and health and sense of community is so important. So thank you for being so welcoming.
Oh, you're welcome.
And that was I think that was before COVID. I think we were wearing masks back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyhow, we became friends, and then we quickly learned that our paths were even more connected because
Yeah.
we were both born in DC.
Yeah.
We both were raised in Maryland.
Yes.
And then, John, I would soon learn that you actually patrolled the neighborhoods that I lived in.
Yeah. We took care of and with the sheriff's office. We had the whole run of the county. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
So that was incredible. And so I love that connection. Just to let our listeners know how accomplished you are, because I know you're a humble person. You were in law enforcement for 30 years, but it started in high school, where you attended a military prep school. You went on to University of Maryland, attending Georgetown ROTC, and then you went and joined the Army, and you were commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army Reserve. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit today about how, discipline perhaps and the military training and law enforcement training helps you deal with mental health and different things challenges that we have in our lives. I wanted to mention that John graduated from University of Maryland with a degree in criminology. And it's very important to mention your beautiful wife,
Yes.
Jeannie, who I know. You guys met in your senior year.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, she truly is one of the sweetest, kindest souls I've ever met. And I know,
Yes. He is. Yeah.
yeah, I know you two really have a beautiful life together. And so that's important too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so you also worked as a correctional officer and you went on to work in the sheriff's office and you retired as a lieutenant in charge of professional responsibility.
Yes.
Now, I think it's important to go through all of that because it shows, because we're going to talk about where you are now.
Right.
And it shows that you come from this, um, uh, I guess you could almost say like a process background, like, not a lot of emotional, it's very, it's law,
Right. Sure.
right? So you have to follow the law, and you're there to make sure that, people do that. So I think that's interesting to recognize where you started and where you've been all the years up until retirement. Now, let me just mention that in retirement, you guys moved to the beach, which is where I've met you.
Right.
In more recent years, you published a book, so you're a
Yes.
writer.
Yes.
And then most recently, you have found your way to poetry.
Yes. Yes.
And if you followed me starting on episode 22, you know that I started reading some of my poems that I published during the PhD journey. And John and I are fortunate enough to be published in a lot of those same anthologies, which is an
Yeah.
honor.
Well, you had mentioned to me, I think we were talking after class, and you had mentioned that you were a published poet, and I thought that was kind of neat. And it was one of those things you put in the back of your mind, right? You don't think too much more about it. And it came up on my Facebook feed for one of the anthologies, and I think there was 5 days left to submit up to 3 poems. And I said, well, I'm going to do this. And so in probably the span of about 3 or 4 hours, I wrote 3 poems and submitted, and one was accepted. And it was like, wow. And it was based on kind of an experience that I was having in retirement, walking down the beach, and thinking about the later years, what you're experiencing in life, going through the later years. And I was like, wow, I got published. This is kind of neat. And you and I also share the having run long distances, and you get a medal. You run a half marathon, you get a medal, whatever. And it was kind of addictive like that. So once I wrote, my book was the medal, and I'm on to the next one. So yeah, so it was kind of like that. But it was your inspiration, you telling me about your writing, and then I decided, I'm going to try this too, because it was just
Oh,
a neat idea. So
I love that.
you
Thank you
you
for saying that.
inspired me to do the writing. So yeah.
Thanks, John. I for me, and I'm curious for you, the way I found my path to poetry was, I think, kind of out of need, like my brain, it needed a release because, the academic rigor of a doctoral program, and you saw me, I would come into the dojo sometimes.
Sure. Yeah.
I was like on fumes. I
Yeah.
would say to you, I'm so tired. I think that the brain needs some type of balance. It needs an outlet, a creative
Yes.
outlet in some way. And so for me, that's what poetry did. I'm curious, do you think after, because it's so interesting, because law enforcement and poetry are so different.
Right.
Do you think that was your way of decompressing from years of law
Well,
enforcement?
I'm not sure if it was um, decompressing as much as kind of filling a void.
Mm-hmm.
Um, everybody, you think in terms of law enforcement, and I'm speaking in generalities. And you know, you have people that go into law enforcement, and they're part of a very large agency, something like DC Police or Baltimore City Police, something like that. And then you have people who join a small department in an area that doesn't have much crime, and there's only maybe 6 people working in that department. So you're in law enforcement, but you might be having a very different experience in law enforcement.
Okay.
Now, everyone has a kind of a shared kind of a thing where you're in uniform, you're carrying a gun, you have a heightened sense of awareness that you carry with you all the time. And so you always have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. But, if you're working in a small department in a community where there's very low crime, the occurrence of you being exposed to some of let's say, the horrors on the job, some of the worst that humanity has to offer. It's less likely with a small department as compared to, say, a big department in an inner city or something like that. So experiences vary, just like, you join the military, and let's say you're assigned and you become a cook, right? Well, that's different than somebody who's the tip of the spear on a battlefield, who's,
Right.
facing gunfire. Both are very necessary. Both you have to have, both in the military, but both a very different experience. So
But
for me, it was kind of a mid-sized department.
Mhm.
And I did have some, experiences on the street. A couple of years I worked as a in the warrant section. You're going out plain clothes and locking people up uh, throughout the day. You're doing different shifts and
Right.
stuff like that. Um, and I also was a crisis negotiator,
I
where they
remember you
have a
sharing those
emergency
stories.
response team call up, and you go out and the SWAT guys do their thing, and you're trying to negotiate maybe with somebody that's barricaded in a house. So, you have that kind of thing. But most of my career, probably 2/3 of it, was either as a supervisor or on the executive staff, where I was doing administrative functions.
Hmm.
So I'm not, you're not on the street, you're not faced with, all those things. So
Well,
I I really enjoyed my job. I could have kept working, but family situation dictated otherwise. It's time to retire. But
why do you think you, and I wanted to mention,
mhm,
because even though you retired from law enforcement, you are a martial artist. You have your second degree black belt
right,
in the Japanese style martial arts that we study, as
right,
well as an equivalent in Kenjutsu.
uh-huh,
And
right,
so, you have kept some of that kind of discipline and some of that
sure,
training, physical
yeah.
training from law enforcement as a martial artist. But I'm curious, how did you find your way to poetry? Something very creative. And is martial arts part of that journey toward
Well,
poetry?
I dabbled in poetry for probably a short period of time in my life, and we're talking probably 20 some odd years ago. Mainly kind of love poems to Jeanne, right? Okay. So, I mean, and then there was some other just kind of, goofy stuff. And but never really thought of myself as a poet, never really pursued it or anything like that. Um, and my first real experience with writing is when I wrote my book, which incorporates some of the stuff, you know, over the 30 years in law enforcement. I did incorporate some of the stuff in the book. Of course, it takes back in the Old West,
And let
but
me just mention the name of the book for our listeners. It
yeah,
is available on Amazon for Kindle,
yes,
and it's called Darlene and the Deputy, or Deputy
yes, Darlene and the Deputy.
and the
Yep.
Deputy. And it's, would you classify a Western novel about post-Civil War Reno, Nevada?
Yeah, it's kind of an adventure love story type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me kind of go back to college. I'm in a theater 110 class, right? And the professor said, any of you can write a play. And he was absolutely sincere. Any of you can write a play. You write it, put it in an envelope, send it to yourself. That was kind of like a copyright thing. And that always stuck with me. I always kept that in the back of my head. I thought that was such a neat idea. But never, I didn't think of myself as a writer because at that time I wasn't a writer. I
Right.
avoided classes that involved a lot of reading and writing. I went for the classes that had multiple choice questions at the midterm and final. So, but over the course of my career, which really was technical writing, I did a lot of reports. And as I advanced and became an investigator, I did lengthy reports. So I became pretty good as a technical writer. Um, and not a lot of joy in that. You're just trying to be succinct. You're trying to be fact based and all that. Um, So I did develop, after college, through the career, I did develop some writing skills with a lot of help from Jeanne. Jeanne is she graduated summa cum laude. She was an extremely good writer, editor in her career as a public affairs officer. A lot of writing and stuff like that. A lot of communication skills that were
Mhm.
really sharp. And she dealt with a lot of people on Capitol Hill. And I would go to her, and she would help me with things on how to phrase things, how to write things, all that. Because I was terrible. My English teachers are probably rolling in their grave today, thinking that I'm a published anything.
I mean,
'Cause,
you are a poet.
yeah, it's funny how
It's
things come
fun.
about, but
It's funny how our lives evolve.
and yes, and
And
exactly,
I mean, I'm gonna let you continue on, but that's why I was like, because I really think about who I want on my podcast. And I think about
right,
how do we, and we'll get to this because I think that you have a lot to teach people about um, balancing the mental toll of challenges and overcoming
sure,
obstacles. You've seen it in your line of work. But it's so fascinating to me that you evolved into a poet.
right, oh yeah, and
It's
I'll tell
beautiful.
you
It's
how.
great. It's life.
I'll
That's the
tell you
way life should be.
I'll tell you the funny thing, how the whole writing thing came about.
Yes.
And of course this is now later on in life, towards very last year or whatever, at the sheriff's office. And my sister was down, and we were watching a movie, and it was about Hemingway. Well,
Okay.
we're a little competitive. And so after the movie, I said, I challenge you. I'll be the first to write a book between the two of us. I think you had to buy a bottle of wine for the other person or something like that. That was the stake. So and the funny thing is, and I carried that forward. I was sitting in the hot tub, and I imagined the first scene in my book, and it's where Darlene gets off the stagecoach. She's been kind of roughed up by this guy that was on the stagecoach, and she shoots him in the butt. That's the opening scene, and it all came to me sitting in the hot tub, and then I started writing. Um, and the writing process was, you have to have time to do that. I don't think when I was working raising kids I would have ever had the time to do anything like that. But now I'm at the end of my career. I've got a bit more time on my hands, and so I started writing as a part of this challenge. And it was a great process. I don't like fiction. I'm a If I read something, it's historical or biographical. I'm not really much of a reader. So, um, and here I am. I'm writing,
Fiction.
fiction. So, but the fun part about fiction is it's whatever you dream up, whatever you think, whatever that next
Okay.
chapter is going to be something that is completely mine. It comes from me. It doesn't exist until I think it and write it. And that was a cool thing. I really enjoyed that exercise of doing it. Would I ever write a book again? Probably not. It's very involved. It took me a long time. It probably took me as much time to get it edited as it took to write it. But it was a great experience. It was a good challenge. It was great for the mind, all that. But when I talked to you about the poetry and you inspired me to go ahead and write a poem, that I really liked. I like the fact that it's condensed. It's not this long, lengthy thing, and I'm trying to be succinct. I'm trying to get whatever point I'm making across, and it's got to be very carefully crafted and communicate a strong message in just a, you know 10, 20 lines or whatever.
Okay,
And that's what I like about it.
this is a good segue. And we did not plan this because I said
Yeah.
to you before we started, I might read one of your poems.
Okay.
Do you mind if I do?
Please.
Okay.
It's
So,
better you read it than me. I'm not.
well, just to let our listeners know, I think right now you have at least 18 or more published poems
Yes.
nationally and internationally. You're in
Yes.
both types of anthologies.
Yes.
So
And
you
with
really
different
be
publishers.
and different, yeah, so you've really taken off with it and it's
Yes.
incredible. I read through all your poems that I have the publications that I'm in as well, and I picked this one. I hope
Okay.
this is
Sure.
Adrift No More.
Okay.
Because I think it talks to some of the issues that I talk about on this podcast. And so
Sure.
this was in a publication, and if you've been following me on past episodes, I read one from Dawn Horizons. This was about new beginnings. This was a
Right.
publication about new beginnings, rebirth.
Yes.
Okay, so here's John M. Dougherty.
Yes.
Adrift no more. I had drifted away far from the shore, my small craft tossed on turbulent waters, alone and wondering my fate, not content to seek refuge in just any port. But God granted me favor, trusting in his divine intervention, surrendering and obedient. I relinquished control of the helm. My boat is now steered by a loving hand, grateful to accept what I cannot earn, standing in the light, his grace, the sun upon my face, brilliant and transformative, adrift no more. Now safely home in my coastal community, among the many followers who radiate his presence. From this peaceful sanctuary, I see the dawn of a new day.
Yep.
That brings tears to my eyes.
Wow.
That's a beautiful
Thank you.
poem. Well, what do you feel when I read that?
Well, for me, it was inspired by a new church that we joined, and we had
Okay.
not been a part of a church for quite some time. And so Jeanne was like, "Hey, we need to go to church." So she drugged me to this church, and it's actually is a play on words because it's Coastal Community Church. It's in Berlin, and so she got me to go, and I was hesitant. I hadn't been going to church in a long time, and it was just being there. The energy, the pastor is really great. And I came from a Catholic background, and this is a Protestant church. We're talking about very different for me, and so that experience and listening to the sermons and um, I was inspired from that to write this poem. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
really a beautiful poem.
thank you.
And I think regardless of whether somebody is active in, faith or not, I think sometimes we all can feel a little lost.
Sure,
And I think that I always say the path is not a straight path, it's a curved path. And
right,
those curves is where we learn and grow. And that poem to me represents kind of like maybe drifting a little bit out and then finding
yeah,
a way back to the
yeah,
path that feels right for you. And
yes.
so that's yeah, it's a wonderful poem.
Yeah, and that kind of it's funny because after going to this church, that was my first poem that I wrote that was religious. And I write all kinds of different topics. I
Yeah,
I write about stuff that, I experience, that I see, a lot of things from traveling and stuff like that. So,
nautical. You've written some interesting nautical
yeah, and
about
stuff
boats
about
and
Delaware,
yeah,
a lot has to do with um the publication. Sometimes a publication comes out as a theme like that one,
right. The
and so you
beginnings.
kind of write to the theme. Some I just write poems and then find a home for them. So, but this kind of started me doing some more religious poetry, which is very new for me.
I think I your journey is so interesting because I mean, we talk about successful aging and how do you
Mhm.
age with good quality of life. I think one really important aspect of that, because now you're in your retirement years, and I know you guys
Right.
travel, is allowing yourself the space to do new things, to be a bit transformative in how you see the world and see life and be open to new things. And so I think that's what,
Yeah.
knowing you, I feel like poetry's kind of opened that, you know,
Yeah.
that
Yeah, absolutely. And
experience for
it's,
you.
uh, the martial arts kind of feeds, the need for physical activity.
Right.
I've got a touch of ADD. You can probably see me talking with my hands and all that kind of stuff. So, but I need the physical outlet, and I need it for my health and all that. So the karate kind of provides that,
But
and the poetry feeds the mind.
there's also a lot of wisdom in the training as well. And I would
Yes,
almost say like poetry to a certain degree, some of the lessons that Sensei has taught us,
sure.
just and I've learned from you and um, you know, my people in the dojo that have more experience, although I haven't been in there for a while. Maybe I find my way back, but a little nervous. But let me get back to I'll get us off topic. I'll start talking about martial arts. Let me ask you this. You're now a poet, you're retired, you're now a poet, and you're a very good poet.
Thank
And so for our listeners, okay, if how do you manage life? I mean, how do you do it? I mean, I think you are successful. You've had a successful career.
you. Right.
You are enjoying retirement. You're traveling. You have good health. You're being creative, writing poetry. How do you help? What do you say to people from all your experiences? How do you get through challenges in your life?
How do you get through
And how do
challenges?
you get through hard things? You've seen it. You've seen people through law enforcement that, aren't quite as successful. So what
Yeah.
is your wisdoms there?
Well, I think like in anything, discipline is important.
Okay.
Um, and in reference to retirement, there's a great speech. I think he's an admiral or something. He gave it to the Naval Academy. I think he was a Navy SEAL, and his whole speech was based on the premise of making your bed every morning.
I've
And
heard this one.
did you hear that
I
before?
did. I did.
And it's a sense of accomplishment, and it's keeping some structure. And I think where a lot of people run afoul in retirement is, okay, I don't have to get up 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and I can fritter the day away. I've got plenty of friends that spend way too much time watching, the TV and the news and getting stressed out. um, I didn't want that. I wanted to be very active, and I didn't want to do the typical thing like play golf.
Yeah.
I'd rather swing around a 3 foot razor blade sword.
I've seen you. You're very good at it
And I
too.
wanted to do something different. Well, now I had been in and out of karate uh, since high school. I might be in a month. Then I stopped for a while, 3 years, then stopped for a while. But it was on and off. And it wasn't until I retired that I had the time to completely devote to it. And I needed it. I was out of shape. I was overweight, coming out of a job where it was fairly sedentary. And, I needed that one to complete a goal that I had set many, many years ago. And, and to get back into shape and feel good about myself, and that was part of that whole experience. And then I got my black belt in karate. Then I decided let's expand and get into kenjutsu.
Hmm.
So
I think discipline
so
is so
yeah,
important for
yeah,
all of us when you're trying to work towards goals.
yeah,
But I think what I'm hearing you saying, and consistency, is that also you need a balance. You need to also have something that I think brings some joy,
yes.
and some just I don't know what I'm trying to say. Help
Well,
me.
it's not the uh, I don't want to say it's all physical, because karate and kenjutsu, although it is very physical, there's a lot of mental thing. You have to, when you do katas, and you have to remember all the different steps and movements, and we have a lot of use of Japanese terms. So there is a mental challenge to it, but it's, I think, mostly physical. So the poetry is really what challenges my mind. And I think, when you get older, your mind you start becoming forgetful, and you have to exercise your brain just as much as your body.
That's
And poetry does
true.
that. And we talked about coming from a background of structure. So all my reports are technical writing type of stuff. And this is creative writing, and it's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly how I describe it for myself. I think that's so
right.
interesting. We haven't done a research study on people like ourselves.
Yeah. But to see what parts of the brain light up
I
when you're
know,
doing when
right?
you're doing poetry. Yeah.
But I think the two of us just kind of validated that, that what I was saying on when I was reading that poetry, that your brain needs an outlet. You can't handle, even if you love your job and you love being in school, when you're 100% focused on something, there's stress involved.
Sure.
Life can be stressful. You need outlets to manage stress. And I think
And
that's
there's people like Musashi,
yes. Oh, share
greatest
with our listeners about Masashi.
good. He's like one of the greatest swordsmen. Now, I don't advocate killing 60 people.
It's an epic novel. It's an epic
Yeah.
Japanese. It's like Our Gone with the Wind. It's an epic
Yeah.
Japanese novel about
Yeah.
Masashi, who was one of the
Yes.
greatwas samurais. It's a
So
great
he was,
story.
I mean, he deadly with his skills with a sword, and but he was also a poet and a painter, and so having that balance, it's really important. There's a guy I learned about, and there's actually a series on Netflix, and it's called SAS Rogue Heroes. It's about British Special Forces, and this one of the most highly decorated guys by the name of Paddy Mayne, and he was a poet, and it's kind of neat to see the dichotomy of this. I mean, this guy was, you want him on your side.
Fierce.
The Germans feared this guy. I mean, he just made their blood curdle because he was such a warrior, but he's also a poet at the same time, which is really kind of neat.
I think that is, I'm so glad you gave that example, and I'm so glad you brought Masashi into this
Yeah,
conversation
yeah,
because
yeah.
I read that book years ago, and I
Hmm.
love that. I love that it absolutely shows this balance that we
Right,
can have in our lives. And I also love how you train to never use it.
right. Yeah, that's a
You
lot.
train to
It's
never use it.
yeah, it's the last thing you ever want to do. But
Yeah.
if you had to, you can protect yourself or your loved ones and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and then and Masashi and people such as yourself and the warriors underst I think you understand that you have to have this kind of peacefulness within
right,
to
because if you don't
walk
have
through
that,
life.
it'll destroy you. That side of things.
I think that's a really I maybe we kind of start to wrap up our conversation with that thought
Sure.
that if you don't find some balance in your life, you don't find some peace, it's going to destroy you. It's perhaps it will be your health. You'll find out that your health suffers, or your
Right.
relationships in your life suffer, or your mental health suffers. So I think that's really the key takeaway from this conversation.
Yeah.
Beyond
And
you being so
yeah,
successful in everything you do,
yeah.
and you inspire me so much, I think you're teaching people that you have to have a balance in life.
And you still, even though you're older and your career is done and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
it still requires self-examination. And I think poetry really helps you to do it. It helps you to, you know, access those parts, your life experiences and things like that, and put it in the written form. But you have to think, and you have to think about yourself and where you fit into the world and all that, and out comes poetry.
I love that. This was great. I guess we could share with our listeners. We had a little technical difficulty getting started today. We
Yes,
did not give up. It took us about 30
yes.
minutes.
I am technologically challenged and wrote my book
Oh
and
my
all
gosh.
my 30 years of reports with one finger that I probably should have had insured over the years.
You know what's funny? As you
Because
just said, technologically challenged, you froze.
yeah.
That
Oh
was perfect timing.
yeah,
Well,
so
John, I first of all, I'm so thankful that you came on. This was
absolutely.
really a lot of fun. I know the two of us, we could talk. We could have a really
Yeah,
long conversation. So
sure.
maybe what we'll do is you'll come back on and we'll continue to philosophize about life. I'm not sure if
Right.
that's a word, but um and yes, thank you so much. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
No, just I'd encourage your audience members to give it a shot. It's funny because my wife and my sister, very smart, really good at writing, and I've challenged them to write a poem, and they don't want anything to do with it, and it's like they can't even, you know, it's like it's like a one, you have to have the desire to do it. I mean,
Yes.
but it's 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 not meant for everybody. And
Oh,
you know, I've just kind of stumbled upon a talent, let's say,
yes.
and I'm going to continue to do it. And I challenge anyone to, hey, try it. Look, this is a person who did not do good in English. So it's like it can happen to you. It's just, try to, access that creative side of yourself and give it a shot. You can't lose. I mean, so
Yeah.
whether you write a book or write a poem or whatever, it's good, and it's good for your mental health.
It's so true. And I think the broader message there, not everybody's going to be a poet.
No.
But, push yourself outside your comfort zone to find something that
Yeah.
brings some meaning in your life. And you might find something that you're passionate about that you never could have imagined.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
if you looked at your younger self, patrolling Montgomery County,
Right.
you can envision this. So it's a great journey. I'm so glad you came on to talk about it with our listeners,
Let me
and look
just say
forward to having
one
you
other
back.
thing.
Sure.
I actually inspired my son to write poetry, and he has been published in two anthologies since.
There you
A
go.
good thing as an English teacher, it's probably a good thing to have on your resume. But he went through a tough year. He got divorced. He's back on the dating scene, and he's going through a tough time dealing with these different women he's dating and stuff like that. And he went to poetry,
Oh, I
and
love
he's
that.
pouring out his feelings in these poems. And he is far better poet than I am. He has intensity in his poems that I don't think I necessarily have. And so I'm encouraging him to do it. And I think it's been very helpful for him. So
I am so glad that you added that just now because it absolutely demonstrates everything I'm talking about on this platform, right? We all go through challenges in life.
yeah.
Maybe you aren't exactly going through something today, but the way life works,
Yeah.
things happen, and you have to have strategies to get through them. And having creative outlet like poetry or painting or, being in a
Yeah.
group like a martial arts group or being involved with some type of, in fact, I'm going to talk about it on a podcast episode about the importance of community. We
Right.
need these things.
Absolutely.
We're social human beings.
Right.
We need outlets to thrive. So
Right.
thank you for sharing about that.
You got
All
it.
right.
I'm a part of a new community.
Okay, now out of respect, I need to say us. Thanks,
All right.
John. All
You're
right.
welcome.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you for tuning in today. All right. Bye.